So friends, we were discussing about the ex situ conservation methods, and in that we have already discussed about the botanical gardens. Next is the seed banks. So botanic gardens, they are always recommended to set up a seed bank for the medicinal plants native and cultivated in the country. So it is always recommended that the botanical gardens, whether they are the international botanical garden or they are nationalized botanical gardens, they should develop a seed bank along with them, wherein they can store the seeds of different kind of plant species that are native to that particular country, or the seeds have been procured from the other countries. And the seed banks are considered as one of the best ex situ methods because large number of seeds of different species can be stored in a very small place. And since these seeds act as a very good research material for the genomic studies, therefore all the research seed banks can also come up with the research facilities, or in other words we can say that research facilities can also be attached to these seed banks, wherein they can provide additional or the important information about the various germ plasms that are stored in the seed banks. Now there are certain problems with the seed banks, because we know that the seeds that are stored in the seed banks, they should be stored under the reduced temperature condition or under the cold conditions, and for that regular or the continuous electric supply is required. This running of a seed bank is not a simple job because it's a specialized and a full-time job. It's not that you set up a seed bank and then you are free. Time to time you have to look after the seeds, you have to look after the viability of the seeds, you have to look after the condition of the seeds. So therefore it is considered as a full-time job. You should also keep all the records of the seeds of the plant species that have been stored in the seed bank. What is the condition of the seeds, that has to be regularly monitored and the record has to be kept for that. And time to time you also have to test the seeds that are stored under those in those seed banks, and therefore running a seed bank is always considered as a full-time job. Second problem is that very little is known for some of the plant species, and therefore we don't know much about the seed biology of such plant species, and therefore it is very difficult to optimize the storage condition for the seeds of those plant species, and this is another problem or challenge, I will say, in case of seed banks. Then it has also been found that 20% of the species, the seeds of the species that are stored in seed bank, they lose their viability, and therefore they become non-functional, or they cannot be used for growing the medicinal plants in case of emergency. And therefore it is always recommended to test the viability of the seeds from time to time, so that if the seeds lose the viability, they can be replaced by the fresh seeds. And another problem is the seed banks cannot be used for those species whose seeds cannot be stored under the storage conditions, or they cannot withstand the dehydration conditions, they cannot withstand the freezing conditions in the seed banks. And such kind of seeds or the plants are known as recalcitrant. So the plants which are recalcitrant, like mango or lychee or avocado, their seeds cannot be stored in seed banks because they immediately lose their viability, and such kind of plant species cannot be conserved through the seed banks. And therefore to overcome all these problems, as we discussed, the viability should be checked at regular intervals. Seeds with decreased viability should be replaced with the fresh samples from the nature or the crops that are grown or under cultivation. And for all these processes, for all these protocols, Board of Plant Genetic Resources and the Crop Genetic Resources Centers, they have developed techniques for seed banking, specifically in case of food crops, because these food crops are essential. They are essential to supply food for the mankind. So all these resource centers or the agencies or the boards, they have come up with certain guidelines wherein they tell you about how to store the seeds under optimized conditions. And the botanical gardens, who are aided by the society that was created by IUCN, that is BGCI, Botanical Garden Conservation International, the botanical gardens which are aided by this agency, they are now adapting the techniques to develop certain seed banks, or they are also adapting the protocols that have been designed by these boards or the resource centers in order to properly store the seeds, in order to properly conserve the seeds of the species. In India, if we talk about, then Department of Biotechnology, they have established these gene banks in the country, because seeds are nothing, they are important source of the genome of the plant. So these are also sometimes called as gene banks. And we have around 4 important gene banks in our country: National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources in New Delhi, Central Institute of Medicinal Plants and Aromatic Plants, that is known as CMAP, in Lucknow, Tropical Botanical Garden and Research Institute in Thiruvananthapuram, Regional Research Laboratory in Jammu, that was started in 1998. And very recently in 2021, our Agricultural Minister, they have inaugurated a state-of-art refurbished gene bank at NBPGR in New Delhi. And that gene bank has accessions of around 4.5 lakh species that are stored. Now, as I told you that there are certain plants or recalcitrant plants who cannot be conserved, whose seeds cannot be conserved in seed banks, and for such plant species we require another type of conservation method, which we call it as field gene bank. So botanical gardens should set up alternative means of ex situ conservation for the species which cannot be stored in the seed banks. So but there are certain problems with the field gene banks. But what are these field gene banks? These are nothing but these are small plots of land or small area of land where those species whose seeds cannot be stored under conservation, they are grown. And such plants that are grown in those areas, they act as an important source for reintroduction, for the material for the reintroduction of the species in their natural habitat. And therefore, since these plants are grown in an open field, therefore these are known as field gene banks. And as I told you, there are certain problems, and these problems are lot of space is required. Because if you compare with the seed banks, wherein seeds which are very small in size, large amount of seeds, large number of species can be stored in a seed bank. But if you want to store similar number of species, you require huge area of land, and therefore this is one of the major drawbacks, that large amount of space is required. You can only target those species for field gene banking whose seeds cannot be stored under the cannot be conserved under the seed bank methods. Then less variation than the seed bank, because large amount of land is required, therefore less variation in terms of number of accessions that can be conserved under the field gene bank has been observed. Then the plants that are being conserved in field gene banks, they are always vulnerable towards various kind of pest attack, various kind of diseases that can occur in the field. So one has to be very careful when you are going for field gene banking. You have to take care of all such kind of pest attack, you have to take care of all such kind of diseases that can occur when the plant is growing in an open field. The fourth method is the cryopreservation. And as I told you that this is one of the most upcoming technique for conserving the medicinal plants. We all know that cryopreservation is a technique wherein the tissues or the cell or their cultures are stored at a very low temperature and sometimes up to minus 196 degrees Celsius. Now this technique is considered as a better technique over the other ex situ methods, but the major problem is the cost factor that comes into play when you have to establish a cryopreservation facility for such kind of for conserving the plant material, because you have to set up certain infrastructural facilities wherein you can store the plant material at very low temperature, and therefore this technique is considered as a costly technique in comparison to the other technique. But if we compare the cost factor in longer duration, then it is somewhat equivalent to those other conservation techniques. Now the major problem with conservation through cryopreservation is there is no universal protocol to conserve the species under conservation. For every plant material, for every plant part, you have to optimize the protocol if you want to conserve that species or the plant part or the cell or the tissue under cryopreservation. You have to optimize the temperature condition, you have to optimize the method conditions by which you can cryopreserve that particular targeted species material. And till now, protocol for more than 200 species has been established and more than 10,000 accessions have been cryopreserved. Now, there are two major approaches for cryopreservation of a particular plant material. First one is the slow freezing or the conventional technique, and second one is the rapid or ultra cooling or the vitrification technique, which is considered as a modern technique, or nowadays it is the most acceptable technique for cryopreserving. In slow freezing, we expose the plant material towards slow decrease of temperature, initially 0.5 to 3 degrees per minute, or by and large, if we talk about in general, 1 degree per minute reduction of temperature is there, and the plant material or the targeted plant material is exposed to such condition wherein the temperature is reducing at a rate of 1 degree per minute up to minus 80 degrees Celsius. So once the temperature reaches minus 80 degrees Celsius, the plant material is allowed to stand for a certain period at that particular temperature, and then it is shifted to liquid nitrogen, where the further lower temperature are attained, or the required lower temperature are attained, and as we discussed, in some cases this lower temperature is up to minus 196 degrees Celsius. Now when we go for slow freezing, the major problem is the formation of ice crystals, because the plant material has water inside them, and when you are freezing that plant material, the water present in the plant material will start getting crystallized in the form of ice, and those crystals can cause the damage to the organelles of that cell, or can damage to the cell. And not only the intracellular water, but the extracellular water also can damage the plasma membrane of those cells. So in order to preserve the plant material from the cryo damage, certain agents are used which we call them as cryoprotectants. And when we are going for the slow freezing technique, low concentration of cryoprotectants are required. Second technique is the rapid or the ultra cooling or the vitrification technique. Now in this, the plant material is immediately exposed to a very low temperature, or immediately exposed to the liquid nitrogen. And when it is exposed to the liquid nitrogen, the protoplasm gets concentrated, and it gradually converts into, or I'll say it goes into a phase conversion, where it gets converted into a glassy material. And this glassy material does not cause any damage to the organelles or to the cellular structure, if we compare it with the slow freezing technique. But yes, we also require cryoprotectants in rapid ultra cooling method, but the cryoprotectant concentration is more than the concentration that is required in the slow freezing technique. But still, since the damage done to the plant cells is less in comparison to the slow freezing technique, rapid or the ultra cooling technique, or also known as vitrification, because of the glassy structure that is formed inside the cell, this technique is more popular nowadays. Now, as I told you that there are certain agents which are known as cryoprotectants are used. These can be broadly categorized into permeating and the non-permeating, and as their name indicates, permeating, they permeate into the cell, and they gradually replace the water inside the cell, and then they convert into the glassy material, thereby preventing the damage that is being given by the ice crystals. And the non-permeating, these are the high molecular weight compounds like hydroxyethyl starch or trehalose. They basically protect the plant membrane on the outer side. And the type of the cryoprotectant that has to be used will be largely governed by the properties or the type of the cell that is under cryopreservation, the type of the tissue that is under cryopreservation, or the organism that is being frozen under cryopreservation. Now, there are four major steps that are involved in cryopreservation. First is pre-culture, whereas the plant material is adapted towards the frozen condition or to the cold conditions. And it has been seen that if the plant material is properly pre-cultured, then the regeneration rate increases from 30 to 60%. Second is the freezing, wherein we have discussed the slow freezing method or the rapid cooling method. Then third step is the thawing, where regeneration occurs, and here the frozen material is exposed to a temperature of 37 to 40 degrees Celsius, and gradually the cryoprotectants are removed from the plant material, because if you rapidly remove those cryoprotectants, then you can cause damage to the plant material. So the cryoprotectants are gradually diluted out of the plant cells, and then fourth step and the last step is the reculture of the thawed material. So once the cryoprotectant have been removed or the plant has been regenerated from the freezing condition, they are recultured over the suitable culture media. And again, the choice of the tissue also contribute to the success of the cryopreservation protocol. Whether the plant material or the tissue or the cell that you have selected, whether it has certain ability to withstand the cryopreservation conditions, that will also govern the success rate of the cryopreservation protocol. Now we move on to the last aspect of the conservation of the medicinal plants, and that is communication and cooperation. As I told you, whatever efforts government agencies put in, they cannot bear fruits until and unless those efforts, those strategies, those policies are supported by the local people, the areas where the people who are living in those areas where conservation is targeted. So therefore, communication and cooperation is an important aspect of conservation of medicinal plants, and this aspect, it largely advocates to build public support for the conservation of medicinal plants through communication and cooperation. This is the major aim of this aspect, and for this, the guidelines, they always recommend to establish a communication strategy, and this communication strategy has to be designed by keeping in mind the target audience, the people who are living in that particular area, or the people whom we want to convey the importance of the conservation of these medicinal plants. So depending upon the target audience, one has to design a particular strategy. So design a strategy for communicating importance of conservation. This is the major aim. Then one can also hire professional communicators, because sometimes the people from the government agency, they are not able to properly convey the gist of the strategy or the importance of the conservation of the medicinal plant. So one can always hire the professional communicators, and these professional communicators have certain newer methods, newer methodologies to convey the idea of the governmental agencies regarding the conservation of the medicinal plant, and they are well equipped in the local language, because one has to target people of a particular area, and if a communicator is well versed with the local language, he can convey the message in a better manner in comparison to the non-technical or a non-professional person. One should also target the public and health practitioners at the local level, because these are the people who, because we know that at certain local areas or in tribal people, the practitioners, they are largely relying on the medicines that are developed from the plants. Therefore, such people can also be targeted, because these people are already using medicinal plant, they know their importance, and they can further sensitize the people or the tribal people or the local people in a very effective manner, because they are treating them also. For them, for those local people, these health practitioners or the public practitioners are not less than a god. So whatever they will say, that will have a great impact on those local people. So if you are designing a strategy for communication, public or health practitioners should also be targeted. Target relevant policymaker, administrator and scientists from both inside and outside the government. So all these people, since they are already expert in their field, they will have a great impact in overall establishing the strategy, in overall establishing the communication, because they will provide you the required tangible and the non-tangible infrastructure in order for the proper implementation of the strategy. And last but not the least, practice what you preach. So if you are designing a strategy, you have to follow that strategy. You have to follow yourself, then only the people will follow you. It's not that you are designing a strategy for people only. You have to follow that strategy yourself, and then only the people will follow you in order to conserve those medicinal plants. Second aspect is decide who should be involved from both inside and outside the organization. In-house staff includes people from the ministry, government organization and press. Press is an important part of in-house staff, because press has a great impact in creating a mindset of the people, and press can easily communicate your ideas, easily communicate your aims to the local people, to a common man, thereby making them aware regarding the importance of the medicinal plant, making them aware regarding the importance of conservation of the medicinal plant. Then the outhouse people include the advertising companies, conservation groups, NGOs. Conservation groups and NGOs, they work at the grassroots level. They can reach to a very common people, to the common people of the area, the people who are living in jungles, in the tribes, in the national parks. They can reach to those people. They can sensitize those people. Every advertising companies, they can come up with the innovative ideas to convey the message of the government or the policy makers. They can create certain innovative ideas how to convey that exact message regarding the importance of conservation of the plants to the people, how they can make them understand that message. So all these people can be roped in order to convey the importance of the conservation of the medicinal plant, so that the local people or the common people, they get sensitized towards it. Then benefits of the outhouse people, we have already discussed, that is fresh eye to the problem. They can see the problem through different aspects, because the in-house people, they are busy with other official cores also. They are working in the government offices. They have so many other work, so they cannot give full attention to the problem, whereas the advertising agencies or the outhouse people, they can bring certain innovation, they can give you certain ideas, they can devise new or innovative strategies on the line of government requirements. They are fully dedicated to the cause, so they can work full-fledgedly on to that particular problem area, and they can have a better communication with the local people. In-house communication staff must be involved at each and every step. It's not only that you can hand over outrightly to the out staff people, but in-house people should be involved at each and every step, from outlining the process, because these are the in-house staff or the people who are working with the ministries or in the government offices. These are the people who will provide you the tangible and non-tangible infrastructural facilities in order to successfully implement the policies or the strategies that have been designed by them, because they are the people who will outline the process. They are the people who will draw up the brief of the implementation strategy. They are the people who can select the relevant experts. They can provide the relevant experts to the advertising agencies. They can provide the relevant experts to the NGOs. They can provide the relevant experts for better communication to the local people. So therefore, in-house people should always be involved at each and every step of the implementation of the strategies. They can provide with the information, relevant information, where the conservation is required, which kind of species is to be conserved in that particular area. So all kind of information can be provided by the in-house people, and therefore they should be involved at each and every step that is taken place, that has been taken in order to implement those policies. Now, these are the few principles that help in designing the strategy. First is effect that is being desired. What is the effect that you are expecting out of that particular strategy or the policy? Then second is the core message. What is the message you want to convey to the people? Because no matter how wonderfully you have designed the strategy, but if you are not able to convey the exact message of that strategy, whole of the hard work that it goes waste. So first you have to design the strategy on the basis of the core message you want to convey. Then what are your target people, whom you are targeting, whether you are targeting an educational strata of the people, or you are targeting a local or the tribal people. So accordingly you have to modify your strategy. What are your what you are planning out of that particular strategy? What is the research and the monitoring activities that you will carry on when you are implementing, or when you are implementing that particular strategy? So how will you monitor the progress of that particular strategy? How will you monitor the effect of the policy that you have designed? So all such things have to be taken care when you are designing a particular strategy for communication or for documenting regarding the conservation of the medicinal plants. Then decide who should be your target audience, like user, whether you are targeting the health professional, including the traditional health practitioners, because they themselves are using the medicinal plant. It's quite easy to make them understand the importance of the medicinal plant. For such kind of people, you have to design a different kind of strategy. Relevant professionals are there, agronomists are there. If you are designing a strategy for agronomists, then you have to design your strategy accordingly. You have to put your main focus on the cultivation aspects of the plant. Horticulturalists are there, pharmacologists are there. If pharmacologists are there, then you have to design your strategy wherein you convey the importance of medicinal plants. Importance, when I say, it means the therapeutical or the medicinal importance of the of those plant species. Park managers can be there, plant breeders can be there. So depending upon the target audience, you have to design your strategy. If you are targeting an industry people, if you are targeting media people, accordingly you have to modify the industry, because your strategy, because industry people, they are more related to the commercial aspect, economical aspect of the medicinal plant. So you have to make them understand that aspect of the medicinal plant in your strategy. Accordingly, media personnel, I have already told you that they play an important role in sensitizing, in making people aware regarding the importance of the medicinal plants. So according to your target audience, I again repeat, you have to design your strategy, you have to design the content of your strategy, you have to design the message of your strategy. Then you can also take into account that what the target audience is required to do. What should be the outcome of the strategy that you have designed? So communication strategies work best when the aim is for the target audience to take a particular action as a result of the message. So you have designed a strategy, you have conveyed a message, but you have to take care that what you want out of the people in their actions, accordingly you have to design your strategy, accordingly you have to design the message of that particular strategy. Awareness is a precursor for getting the desired results. What and why, what you want out of, why you want out of those people, that you have to convey through your strategies. Modifications that are required in the campaign includes the improved training in professions. Use professionals to train the professionals. This is a new, I will not say a new concept, but this is one of the most popular concept, train the trainers. So you can hire professionals to train the professionals. Incorporation of the material in the formal educational curriculums. You can incorporate the study material. You can incorporate specific topics in the curricula wherein the young people or the school children can come to know about the importance of the conservation of the medicinal plant species. This will again help in spreading the message. Incorporation of information into informal education and outreach. Botanical gardens are there. You can always organize the visits to these botanical gardens, to the seed banks, to the field gene banks, where you can educate the people, common people, informally. You can outreach to the people. Then encourage locals to grow the medicinal plant they need rather than uproot them from the nature. Again, sensitize the people towards conservation of the medicinal plants. What can be done for achieving the targets for which the strategies have been designed? Small medicinal plant gardens or the areas in the park or the green belts or the lawns of the establishment can be developed. There are numerous parks in a particular society. One can develop a small corner where medicinal plants are grown. These plants are properly labeled, their name, so that the people who come for a walk, children who come to play in those parks, they can get educated about those medicinal plants. Their therapeutical value they can get educated about. Guide them, organize their visits, open day at research facilities and botanical institutes, so that they can get aware about the research activities that are being carried out on those medicinal plants. One can always organize lectures and formal courses on the medicinal plants, their conservation and the importance of the medicinal plants. You can always go for educational campaigns, and you can also organize visits to the protected areas. So these are few methods or the few techniques one can follow in order to convey the importance of the medicinal plants. So friends, this was all about the conservation of the medicinal plants, how one can go for the conservation, how one can sensitize people, how one can communicate with the people to sensitize them about the medicinal plants and about the conservation of the medicinal plants. Thank you.